thought leader seems to be stereotyped as that mature and experienced leader who's not only been there and done that, but has also taken the time to share his experience with others. Also, it's typically a leader that doesn't micromanage, but also one that doesn't put up with any crap and tells it like it is. It's Miyagi telling Daniel San that to be a good martial arts, you have to first go through the wax on, wax off process. It's Gandalf practically forcing Bilbo into adventuring outside of the Shire by setting up the meeting with the dwarves without his consent. It's Yoda speaking in weird ways. It's Vito Corleone helping out others without asking for anything in return. Do these types of leaders only exist in the fictional world, or is it possible to achieve such status in real life? One element that sets wise thought leaders apart from the rest of the thought leaders is that they lead with their stories. Abraham Lincoln was one of such leaders. He was known for telling captivating stories, and some might say that that was his secret weapon. In the courtroom, on the campaign trail, at official events as president, and anywhere else, he always had a good story at hand to capture attention and influence people. Lincoln knew that stories could also be used as a shield to deflect attacks in difficult conversations and situations. Such a moment is described in a New York Times article, Lincoln Tells a Story, where it's mentioned how Lincoln deflected a tough question about slavery by telling a story about a party of Methodist parsons that was traveling in Illinois when he was a boy. A similar situation is portrayed in a scene of the movie Lincoln, which led to Daniel Day-Lewis winning an Oscar for Best Performance by an Actor in a Leading Role, where Lincoln shares a funny story to bring down the stress and tension in the room. In this video, we'll go over some steps that you can take to become known as a wise thought leader to command attention and influence like Abraham Lincoln did by leading with your stories. Leading with your stories as a wise thought leader. A key action you need to take is to tune your eyes and ears so that you can identify a good story when you read it or hear it. Stories can be found in books, movies, series, speeches, and many other places. Most leaders don't come up with the stories they tell. Only a few leaders will take the time to turn their experiences into great stories that can later on be shared. This is a topic for another time, as creating stories from scratch is a more complex process. In this video, we'll focus on being able to identify great stories in a way in which we can add these to our repertoire. Creating a repertoire of stories you can lead with. There are two ways in which you can pull stories from books. One is to get books that are about stories, such as the case of Tales of the Dervishes and The Gateless Gate, the classic book of Zen koans. These are books that share stories that Zen masters and Sufi masters study and leverage with the goal of being able to attain and share wisdom. Another option is to read other non-fiction books and pull stories from those. Any Robert Greene book is an example of this. His 33 Strategies of War book is full of stories about Napoleon, Alexander the Great, and many others that are used to illustrate the principles of war that he shares. You can pull stories from those books and use them for other purposes. Even if you're not a military thought leader, you can still use many of those stories in that book and repurpose them for your leadership efforts, and we've done so in our videos. Malcolm Gladwell's books are another example. His job is basically to tell interesting stories about ideas that most people would find uninteresting if they read it in their pure form. He goes through many papers, research, hours of interviews, and distills all that data and information into digestible and captivating stories. And there are many more books like these. Now, just reading the books won't magically make you a good storyteller. It's not just about highlighting these stories. That helps, but it's just the beginning. If you want to take it to the next level, here are 3 steps you can take. Number 1, use Post-it flags to mark the stories you want to leverage. This will make it easier to find those stories when the moment to use them shows up. Instead of having to go through the whole book, you can quickly go through the pages where the great stories are. And an extra tip is to leave a small note next to the Post-it flag with some reminders of what the story is about. In my case, I use post-it flag on top of the books to bookmark stories and on the side of the books for quotes or other important information related to the topic of the book. And by doing so, I make sure I'm maximizing the value of every book I read. Number 2, look for opportunities to leverage these stories. Recording the stories is not enough. In order to memorize these, you have to use them. Always be on the lookout for opportunities to leverage these stories. It could be a speech you're giving, a meeting you're conducting, or like this, a video that you're recording for social media, and even a conversation with a friend. Any interaction with another human being is a great opportunity to tell a story. Number 3, work on memorizing and delivering the story. At first, you likely butchered the story a bit. Just because you heard it and you find it a good story doesn't mean you can share it. It's part of the process to butcher the story, but you gotta keep working on it. Make sure you take mental notes of the parts you missed. Also, pay attention to the audience's reaction. If you didn't see any noticeable reaction or follow-up questions, your story might have not landed and you need to work on your delivery. This might include making some room for silence, lowering your voice at certain points, maybe even screaming or changing your voice to differentiate characters in your story. This might feel awkward and uncomfortable at first, but it's the key to unlocking your full leadership and influence potential. Leverage the power of stories as a wise thought leader. Books are just one source of inspiration. You can also pull stories from articles you read, movies you watch, and many other places. The most important element is embracing the process. Becoming a wise thought leader takes time, it takes effort, and it will likely include failure in the form of telling stories that might not land at first. If you push through these challenges, you'll come out on the other side as someone who can lead others and influence them with power instead of force. Another tool you can leverage is our content. Feel free to borrow our stories because we do so from other authors and leaders as well. We repurpose stories that we find in books and many other places and use them in our content. If you follow our YouTube channel, you'll be able to get notifications when we share new content, and 99% of the time, we'll include a story in these videos. Feel free to follow us on YouTube and many of our other social media channels.